Okay, so you know that feeling, right? You're browsing for a new book and you see the classic section. You feel like you should pick one up, but man, that new thriller just looks so much more exciting. It's this huge debate in the reading world, classic versus modern, and it feels like it never ends. But what if I told you the entire debate is built on a foundation that isn't really there? What if we've been asking the wrong question all along? I love this quote from writer R.M. Archer because it just hits the nail on the head. She used to avoid classics because they weren't boring enough. It captures that sense of duty, that feeling that classics are a chore, something you're supposed to read, not something you actually want to. And I think a lot of us can relate to that. So, that's the big question we're tackling today. Are the classics just homework you have to get through, while modern books are where the real fun, the real adventure is? We're going to dig into this tension, and I promise the answer is probably not what you're expecting. That feeling that R.M. Archer talked about, it's not just some random preference. For a lot of us, it's a genuine dilemma, and it all starts with our own personal reading journey. Her story is a perfect example of this. For years, she was all about modern fiction. But then, as she got older and her own perspective on the world started to solidify, she found herself getting pulled toward the very classics she used to think were so boring. You see, the books didn't change at all. She did. Her tastes evolved right along with her. So this isn't just one person's experience. This same exact journey plays out on a massive scale, especially in our schools. And it's not just a feeling. We've actually got data that shows just how deep this classroom divide runs. Just look at this. A 2023 study in Sweden asked high school students what they like to read. A whopping 50%, half of all students, prefer contemporary books. And the classics? Only 3%. I mean, that's a huge gap. The preference for modern stories is crystal clear. So the real question is, why? Your first thought is probably the language, right? All the old, complicated sentences, the these and thous. But get this, the study found something totally surprising. When they asked students if the language was too hard to understand, the vast majority said, nope, not really. So if it's not the language, what on earth is it? And here it is. This is the real issue. It wasn't about understanding the words. Both teachers and students pointed to the same thing, a relevance gap. The students just didn't see how these old stories had anything to do with their lives today. They could read the book, sure, but they just couldn't connect with the world inside it. Okay, so we've got the divide sorted. People feel it, the data shows it. Now, let's break down the traditional arguments. What are the key differences that people always point to when they try to separate these two categories? First up, the most obvious one, language. Classic literature is known for that rich, sometimes really complex and descriptive style. Modern fiction? Well, it usually goes for simpler, more direct language. The idea is to make the story accessible and keep the pages turning fast. In second, there's the focus. Classics are famous for putting big themes right up front and center. We're talking love, honor, justice, the meaning of life. They are not shy about it. Modern fiction, on the other hand, tends to put plot and action first. The themes are definitely there, but they're often more in the background, something you discover along the way instead of being the main event. So here's a quick rundown. Classics. Complex language, big overt themes, and often reflecting a more traditional worldview. Modern. Easy-to-read language, a focus on plot, and reflecting the more diverse, sometimes messy, worldview of today. This is the conventional wisdom, the story we're all told. But what if this whole framework is completely made up? Okay, now this is where things get really, really cool. We're about to pivot from what the debate is to why the debate even exists in the first place. Because it turns out that this clean line we draw between classic and modern has a very specific and actually pretty recent history. So let's hop in a time machine and go way back to 1795. A philosopher named Friedrich Schiller comes up with this really influential idea. He says there are basically two kinds of art. First, there's naive art, which he calls ancient, and it's like a simple, direct reflection of the world, almost like a perfect mirror. Then there's sentimental art, which he calls modern, and it's not a reflection of the world itself, but a reflection of the artist's feelings and ideas about the world. It's complicated, it's subjective. And that idea right there is the seed that grew into our entire debate. But here's the twist, and it's a big one. According to scholar Joseph Farrell, thinkers like Schiller weren't really trying to figure out what ancient Greece and Rome were actually like. No, they were trying to figure out their own world, the modern world. And to do that, they needed something to compare it to. So they basically invented this idea of a simple, pure, ancient world to be its opposite. The classic was literally constructed as a tool to help them define what it meant to be modern. So if this whole classic versus modern idea isn't some timeless truth, but an invention, what does that mean for how we look at our own books? This is where we can start to flip the whole script. So let's really push this. Joseph Farrell asks this brilliant question. If modern isn't just a date on a calendar, but a set of social conditions, couldn't a city from the ancient world actually be modern? Just thinking about that for a second starts to break down all the categories we've always taken for granted. And this is exactly what he means. I mean, think about the things that we associate with modern life. Crowded cities, complex economies based on money, lots of different cultures mixing together, high literacy. Well, guess what? Ancient Rome and Alexandria had all of that. By that definition, those ancient cities were deeply modern places, while a lot of rural parts of the world today are in many ways still ancient. And that brings us right back to our own bookshelf. If classic and modern aren't just about when a book was written, but about its style, its worldview, and how it relates to the world, then how do you even begin to categorize the stories you love? Maybe the question we should be asking isn't classic versus modern. Maybe the real question is, what kind of story is this, and what does it have to say to me? Right here, right now.